If you're excited that the UFC is back, then be sure to show it by smashing the like button. Welcome back everybody to the Ultimate Breakdown here on Cucuy TV. In today's episode, we will be going over the main event for UFC 249 between Tony Cucuy Ferguson and Justin Gaethje. In this video, I will be going over the tail of the tape. I will present you guys my own personal fighter cards that I have created. I will break the fight down, and then at the end, I will tell you guys who I think will win come fight night. So with that being said, let's jump right into the tail of the tape. When looking at these two fighters, they are virtually identical in size, both are 5'11". The only two major differences comes down to the fact that Tony Ferguson has a 6-inch reach advantage. Additionally, when you take a look at Justin Gaethje, his body structure is very muscular. He's a very strong fighter. But when you take a look at Tony Ferguson, he is rather pretty thin. Now, I will explain this in further detail and how it will be affecting the fight during the breakdown part of the video. But before we get to that, let us take a closer look at the Cucuy TV fighter cards. Starting with Justin Gaethje. Justin has an overall rating of 91, with 91 striking, 87 grappling, 91 stamina, 94 chin, 89 defense, and a 93 physicality attribute. For Gaethje's standout attributes, it will really have to come down to his physicality and chin. He is a very durable fighter who will always take one big blow to dish out two. Now lately in his last 3 fights, he has been the patienced Justin Gaethje, who is able to contain himself, pace himself, and fight a bit smarter. But aside from that, he is also able to use his physical durability to continuously come forward and get in the face of the opponent, chopping down the legs and the body. He is really a brick wall to go through, and that's why most of his losses came against opponents who were able to weather the storm. So now with a calmer approach, I can definitely see him being able to go 5 rounds. Now that was Gaethje, a very solid competitor and a strong fighter. Switching over to Tony Cucuy Ferguson, he also has a 91 overall rating, with 93 striking, 92 grappling, 96 stamina, 88 chin, 89 defense, and 90 physicality. Tony Ferguson, if you're going to be taking a look at him and if you want to generalize him as a certain fighter, he will be the fighter who can make his output grow linearly as the fight's progressing. And usually that's not the case with many fighters. Usually it just declines as the fight goes on. But Tony is a really great athletic conditioned fighter. He can go 5 rounds without a problem. And that really is his strongest asset. That is why he has a 96 stamina attribute. Pair that up with unorthodox and effective striking, coupled with very dangerous grappling, you have Tony Cucuy Ferguson, who is on a 12-fight win streak. He's got 88 chin and 89 defense, because if you take a look at Tony Ferguson, his best defense is his offense. He comes forward and never really tries to make his opponent throw a shot back at him. And when Tony gets hit, he usually gets hit at a really weird angle, which can make him go down, which can get him hurt. But so far, he seems to be a fighter who can recover pretty fast. And against a heavy-hitting Justin Gaethje, can he recover? Can he find that opening? Well, let's find out by going over to the breakdown part of the video. For a very long period of a time, this was the fight that I really wanted to see go down. You have Tony Ferguson, who seemingly goes in and beats his opponents up to a point where you can't even recognize them, leaves him wearing a crimson mask, just a total beast in that octagon. Now, if we then take a look at Justin Gaethje, you can somewhat say the same, but you know, Justin is not leaving his opponents cut up, right? But he is taking them to a place where they really have to dig down deep, and by the end of the fight, they're just very damaged. Whether he wins or loses, his opponent is feeling it. So when you take a look at them two big trains coming forward and colliding, it is really just bound to be a very nice fight. Good competitive fight in my opinion, and there will be some big exchanges, some real damage. Will there be some cuts? We'll see, right? Justin Gaethje does come forward. Tony Ferguson does like to come forward as well. So it will really come down to who is taking the first step backwards. And whoever is taking the first step backwards, in my opinion, is going to be losing. Because when you have a fighter like Tony Ferguson, who always likes to come forward and use offense as defense, you don't want to be put in a situation where Justin Gaethje is guarding up, marching forward, and chopping down your legs, body, and is just overall throwing down some really hard leather. However, if there is a fighter out of these two that can fight on the back foot, it is most certainly Tony Ferguson with his 6-inch reach advantage. And the main difference between Justin and Tony is that Tony is just gradually building that savagery up. From the outside he's picking at you, jabbing you, going to your body, and piece by piece making you get accustomed to getting hit. And the more you get hit, the more you want to kind of back down. And when you start backing down, that is when Tony Ferguson picks it up and comes forward, pins you against the cage, and just starts elbowing you and just keeps you busy to a point where you just are smothered. His opponent Justin Gaethje operates the opposite way. He immediately tries to go forward and get it going, right? In his last 3 fights, sure, he has taken it a bit slower, but I believe against a fighter like Tony Ferguson, there is no point in preserving yourself and trying to go 5 rounds, because Justin Gaethje is not going to be the same fighter he was in round 1 as he was in round number 5. Tony Ferguson, on the other hand, he can go all fight long. It's really a spectacular feat and a skill that he has. Now, knowing this, and through many interviews that Justin Gaethje has given us, he has alluded to the fact that, look, either he's going down or I'm going down. And with that mentality, you can't expect this guy to go 5 rounds, because first of all, he's not going to go 5 rounds even if he tried, and if he did, he's probably not going to be winning in the later stages of the fight at all. So his approach is going to be, look, I'm gonna knock you out, and here I go. And from the first round on, I believe that is the best chance for him to actually start knocking out his opponent Tony, because if you think about it, at that point Justin Gaethje will be 100%. He will be able to go and load up on a punch, and because it is early on in the fight, both fighters won't really know their range yet. They won't get used to each other's pace yet, so it is much easier to catch one another off guard. And if there is one fighter out of these two, Justin Gaethje is the fighter with the one punch knockout ability. Now, with that said, stylistically speaking, Justin Gaethje is a type of fighter who will take his time in order to establish momentum with pressure. He's not really going after you right away. He's not really that wild, but he will just gradually build up by turtling up, having a very solid guard, chopping down your legs, your body, and then just gradually pick it up, right? When you have a fighter like that in Justin Gaethje, who is very physical, it is very hard to get him off of you if you don't have power of your own. When you take a look at a fighter like Dustin Poirier or Eddie Alvarez, these two fighters have legitimate strength, physical strength, some real power in their bodies, and they can back up and stand their ground as well. That is what, for example, Eddie Alvarez was able to do. But when you take a look at Tony Ferguson, the much thinner Tony is going to have a very hard time standing his own ground, and that is why mobility is going to be something Tony Ferguson will apply from the get-go. But how much can he move and how much can he hit Justin Gaethje from the outside before Justin Gaethje can get in and start doing damage of his own? We know in the inside, Tony has great elbows, and he will definitely utilize them. So for Justin Gaethje to get cut, it is pretty much inevitable in my opinion. For him to then go ahead and welcome all of these cuts and damage, whatever it may be, and then try and give it back, is exactly what makes Justin Gaethje a tough fight for Tony. Most people, they will back off, right? They will take a step back. But with a fighter like Gaethje, who is very fiery, very determined, he will do whatever it takes to land his own shot. And because Tony Ferguson does not have the knockout ability and the knockout punch, for him to earn Justin Gaethje's respect, it will most likely have to come by him going to the body and slowing him down in that manner. And then from there, once he's slowed down, once he takes a couple extra big breaths, then Tony Ferguson can get in and land his elbows. Apart from that, it is most likely going to be him picking Gaethje apart from a distance with teep kicks, long jabs, long spinning elbows, and maybe even present a couple of submission threats. Tony is very unorthodox, very awkward. It is very hard to get a good read on him, and I highly doubt that Justin Gaethje is going to get a better read on him than what the first round may suggest, right? Because in the first round, he can compete at 100%. Second round, yeah, perhaps as well. I don't know how the pace is going to be in this fight, but assuming that these two will be looking to finish each other, then it must be a fight where Tony is going to get the pressure immediately put on him, or somewhat immediately put on him, and he will have to deal with it. Now, when it comes to the grappling department, well, obviously Justin Gaethje has the wrestling, but I highly doubt at this level and at this point, if he hasn't shot him for many takedowns and secure a takedown game plan and win a fight, I highly doubt that he will do it now, because it is the most important fight of his life at this point, right? And especially with somebody like Tony Ferguson, who is very elusive, very rangy. I mean, 6 inches of reach advantage is not nothing, especially for a fighter like Justin Gaethje, who is a fighter who, shells up, turtles up, and he doesn't really fight that long. So Tony can definitely manipulate that distance, pick him apart from there, slow him down, and really get himself a good head start entering the later rounds. And if Justin Gaethje decides to take him down, I think he's not going to be able to keep Tony Ferguson down. Just too long of limbs, crazy elbows from the bottom, and I simply do not believe that Gaethje wants any of that. Now, with all of this said, who do I think will win come fight night? Let's go over to the final part of this video. Now, going into this fight, many people will be under the assumption that Tony Ferguson is going to be the heavy favorite to win. I do believe that in a 5-round fight, Tony Ferguson is most likely going to be the one who can come out on top because of his cardio, because of his pace, because of his 5-round experience. But at the same time, he is a fighter who is going to be going up against a serious power puncher. I don't really recall any fighter that Tony has fought that has the serious, legit power that Justin Gaethje has. Aside from that, the durability, the ability to stand his ground and march forward. Tony Ferguson has always been the fighter who comes forward and pressures fighters who cannot really take pressure all too well, right? But that being said, those individuals were not really pressure fighters themselves. So when it comes to a fighter like Gaethje, if he gets backed up by Tony Ferguson, yes, 100% he will get really brutalized. But aside from that, the same can be said for Tony Ferguson. If Gaethje manages to get in, he can most definitely get the knockout. Most definitely. If he can go to the legs and chop those, I believe that he can really damage his legs. Will Tony Ferguson be in his face to do that? That is up for debate. That is something that we will have to see come fight night. However though, if I have to make a prediction, I will have to go with the fighter who makes the most logical sense, especially in a 5-rounder fight. I will be picking Tony Ferguson by a 4th round TKO finish. I believe early on in the fight, Tony Ferguson is going to be meeting somebody who is very, very strong. Not only strong, very durable in the sense of being able to take damage. He's not going to be a fighter that will immediately quit. That is why he has to go to the body, slow him down, do what Eddie Alvarez did. And in that, he can find success. And especially in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round, there's no way Justin Gaethje can survive. And especially if Tony Ferguson gets damage early on. That being said, do not be surprised if Justin Gaethje is going to be the one who can stand in the middle of the octagon, back Tony Ferguson up, hit him with inside leg kicks, and land a big right overhand that can catch him right on the chin. Tony Ferguson is a fighter who is out there. His chin is out there. He throws in odd angles. He can find himself off balance sometimes. And if a legit power puncher can catch him, he's not going to be recovering in my opinion. That being said, I will still pick the fighter who has the more tools, the best chances at winning, and that is Tony Ferguson. 4th round TKO finish it is in my book, but I want to know what you think. Leave it all in the comment section down below, and as always, in the end, only time will tell the truth. As always, I have been Keenan from Keenan KTV, signing off. Later.